Well, hello again. Thanks for joining us for Big Game Bound. This is week 13 of the NFL season. The playoff races are really starting to take shape, and it's going to be an interesting final month and a half, especially in the AFC where the race is still wide open. I'm Jack Doles, and coming up on Big Game Bound, Ty Halleck joins us. He played for the Lions. He also was a Lion fan growing up, so he knows what this Thanksgiving holiday means in Detroit. We'll discuss that. We'll talk about some big matchups, the Bills versus the Cowboys, the Raiders versus the Chiefs. Our big guest is former Falcon coach Mike Smith, and our big decision will help you with those for your fantasy football team with Bob Harris from footballdiehards.com. Well, let's bring in Ty Halleck now, as we do every week. Ty played 7 seasons in the National Football League with the Lions, the Jaguars, and the Bears. He's our NFL analyst. Ty, it's Thanksgiving week, and you're from Michigan, and you played for the Lions. What does this game mean to this organization and to players, especially ones who grew up with this game as part of the tradition?
Well, I think for the organizational standpoint, it's something that, they got involved with a long time ago, way before big TV and money. This was an opportunity to provide a game around a meal, either before, during, or after, depending on, what family you're involved in. But, it's an awesome day. And for Lions fans, you're used to it. This is part of your heritage and culture as being a Lions fan. This is probably the one that you get excited about because it's all about resting and eating food and being with family and all those things. So I think the organization hit it good a long time ago, and as things have progressed, now we got Thursday games and other ways for other teams to be able to do it, because now it's become more about the TV side and the money, et cetera, that now other groups want to do it. And the Detroit Lions were part of that early part that all of us kind of relate to.
I know that there's been talk before some of these previous new TV deals that maybe the Lions shouldn't be on this. If you were running the networks, would you keep this tradition going, or would you be looking to rotate the teams?
Well, I think from a business decision, there's probably an answer there somewhere in between, or maybe it's a no. I mean, it just based on kind of where the Lions have been over the last few years. But the reality of it is, from the kind of the emotional side and the history side of this, and how long they've done it, I would definitely say yes. I'm obviously biased as a former Lion. It was a special week. That short week and going in knowing that you're going to see your family and have a meal afterwards is something that I enjoyed, not only in my playing days there for a couple of seasons, but I also enjoyed it beforehand. So I business-wise, it may make sense to switch it up, but the reality of it is, I think for what they did and what the Ford family did a long time ago for that, and their commitment to football and family, I think it's something that should keep going.
I know you had kind of a pinch me moment because you got to play in this game. Tell me about that. Watching this with some family one year and then being on that field the next.
Yeah, so part of our family tradition for a couple of years with my sister Lynette and her husband Bill and their family, the Aaron's family down in Detroit, they made it part of their tradition to go to the game and then have a meal afterwards. And in college, while I was at Michigan State going for my junior to senior season, I went down there. I kind of looked around, and you start saying to yourself, wow, it'd be so cool to play in the Silver Dome, and you start looking at players, and there were guys like Toby Caston and Victor Jones, 2 linebackers that were special teams guys that I got a chance to play with, that had the big towels back then. Part of the reason why you have a smaller towel now is because guys like Toby were winging that thing around. But you just said to yourself, like, look, man, it would be so cool to run down on a kickoff or a punt, let alone even just playing. And to think about all the guys that were there then, and then literally a year later, I was getting a lot of tickets to have a lot of the same people, along with others, come down for a Thanksgiving Day game and then go back to the same place and have a meal, was really, really incredible. And I think it goes back to that tradition and what you love, the generosity and the togetherness and thankfulness of being a part of something like that, along with a family that's opening up their doors to you, like the Aaron's family did for our family, and having a football game on top of it. It's just another way where football and family and that day really bring a lot of people together. And it was a super cool experience. But just thinking about that college experience and then literally a year later being there was really a pretty awesome transition.
And we'll close out with Ty's new top 5. The Saints at number 5, Seahawks at 4. Patriots dropped to 3 because the Ravens were so good on Sunday, and the 49ers are still Ty's number 1 team. Tomorrow afternoon, the 8-3 Bills travel to Dallas to play the Cowboys. Matt Roberts, our Cowboys correspondent, host of the Silver Star Nation, joins us. Matt, how hot is Jason Garrett's seat right now?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jack, it's certainly hotter than it's been in a long time. For Jerry Jones to sit down like he did with reporters after that game on Sunday and express his frustration with the coaching staff and how they got out-coached by Bill Belichick, which we all know there's no real shame in that, but the devil's in the details when you play the Patriots. And Jerry got a good glimpse of just how far off the Cowboys were in that game management, the situations. He was not happy with how things went down, the way they just got out coached, especially in special teams, that third phase of the football game that is talked about so much by Jason Garrett. They did not do well in it on Sunday, and I know that that seat's certainly starting to heat up a little bit, and it is when Jerry Jones starts talking about that, because he has not done that since Jason Garrett has been the head coach here in Dallas.
Yeah, but who hasn't been out-coached by Bill Belichick? Now, this is a first-place team. What's the feeling around it right now? Is it a glass half full or is it half empty?
I think they're benefiting from the fact that they're in a division with an Eagles team that is even more of a mess right now. Nobody really knows what's going on with them. The Cowboys do have the talent, and I feel like that's where Jerry's comments were born out of. They have the talent to be a competitive football team, but they have not shown that, and they at least have not shown it in a consistent manner. So I think they're starting to get a little restless, but I think there's a feeling of, okay, well, this team might get in the playoffs and they can win the East, which might not be that big of a challenge, but once they get into the playoffs, what are they going to do? This team under Jason Garrett, this is kind of a put up or shut up year, and a lot of the thought is, getting in, winning one game and losing the divisional round is not good enough. This team needs to make a substantial run into the playoffs, and from what we've seen and what they put on tape against good teams, it's really hard to see that happening right now. Now, they can get hot here late in the season, but that's certainly going to be something that needs to happen to see some improvement, to get some confidence in this team moving forward.
Now their opponent, Buffalo, is rolling. They're 8-3, great record, but they only have one victory over a winning team, and that's Tennessee. Are the Cowboys confident they can win this game, and how?
I feel like, I don't know that they're confident, because you look at the Cowboys and they're 6-5, but who have they beat either? They haven't really put together a stellar resume so far, so they're looking at this as an opportunity to be one of those big wins that they can get. They do typically do well at home on Thanksgiving, but I don't think by any stretch that the Cowboys fans or this team is taking this game for granted. That's an 8-3 team. As Bill Parcells says, your record is you are what your record says you are. 8-3 is a pretty good record, so this Cowboys team not going to be sleeping on this Bills team, and for them to have success, you have got to stop these slow starts. Since that big win in Philly, the Cowboys have been outscored 31-3 in the first quarter of these last handful of games. You do that against a team like the Bills with that defense that they have, it could be a long day in Cowboy land. Now, this is a game that they do feel like they should expect to win. You look at the schedule coming out, they expect to beat the Bills and really get in this race down the stretch. If they lose this game to the Bills, then the Eagles have some new life, and then you're talking about a whole different race down the stretch. So it's a very important game, but I don't think many Cowboys are resting easy heading into this one on Thanksgiving.
When you think of rivalries in the NFL, you think Bears-Packers, Cowboys-Redskins, and Raiders-Chiefs. This is one of the best. They play this week in a key AFC West showdown. Joining us from the Bay Area is Mark Carpenter. You've probably seen him on Big Game Bound for his work with the 49ers. Well, he covers the Raiders as well. Great to have you again, Mark. Mark, how intense is this rivalry?
I'll say this, I've been covering the Raiders for the last few years now, and whenever they play Kansas City, it's simply known as Chiefs Week at Alameda headquarters, all right? It's one of the only practices where they blast stadium sounds as loud as you can. While leaving the facility, you're still hearing all the simulated Arrowhead sounds, and so it's really important, and they've played so many big games over the decades, but this is the first time recently where this game has actually mattered again. This is an opportunity for the AFC West. This is a possibility for a division title for the Raiders, and the Chiefs have always been that team where, if Oakland's having a good year, Kansas City will respond, and that's what makes it such a good rivalry. They have lost 4 in a row to KC. They have not won at Arrowhead since 2012, so although that, they'll have games where, they can play the Chiefs really tight. For some reason, when the Raiders go to Arrowhead, it is a different environment, and this rivalry has only grown, though, as we see the great quarterbacks to emerge, Derek Carr and, of course, the reigning MVP, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be amped up this week. All right, Mahomes threw for 4 touchdown passes against the Raiders in week 2. That was in the second quarter. That was shortly after the Raiders washed their hands of Antonio Brown. At that point, it looked like this season was on the brink. That was week 2. How did John Gruden keep this ship on course?
You're talking about a Raiders team that really is one of the most resilient in the entire NFL. Not only dealing with the Antonio Brown mess, but all the chatter from last year. John Gruden was constantly being roasted for, hey, why'd you trade Khalil Mack? What happened with Amari Cooper? Can you really make it work with the draft picks? And all these guys, all these injuries, they've only recently had their regular starting offensive line. And the other thing about this Raiders team is that they know their identity, okay? This team on the offensive side of the ball, it is built around the offensive line. They spend money on Trent Brown. They bring in Richie Incognito. You got Rodney Hudson. You got Gabe Jackson. And then you got the bell cow rookie running back, Josh Jacobs. He's been phenomenal. Derek Carr, it's kind of, you can just tell that he feels comfortable in the John Gruden system, and they make it work with the receivers they have, and they're consistent. And this is a team that just realizes what they are, and the defense will allow big plays from opposing quarterbacks, but they're always in it. John Gruden summed it up perfectly the other day, where it was like, hey, you know what? We're like a prize fighter that will make you beat us in 15 rounds. We're going to take you the distance. You may win here and there, but it is going to be a slugfest too. And another aspect about this Raiders team that's so entertaining are the rookies. And Mike Mayock and John Gruden, they have done such a great job together. Josh Jacobs, Max Crosby, Foster Moreau, Hunter Renfrow, Jonathan Abram, if only he was still healthy. But to think that they can get all these great contributions from first-year players really is something else, and it really is great to watch. These young guys play like veterans, and you can really tell that there's a strong culture with this club.
Yeah, you can see if you draft well, you can turn things around. Now, the Raiders move to Las Vegas next year. That sort of thing can really turn a fan base against you. Has that happened at all in Oakland? Or are the fans as crazy as they've ever been with this team in the hunt?
Jack, there was a bit of that when the Raiders to Vegas news first came down several years ago. There was a sense of like, hey, you know what? You're turning your back on the city of Oakland. And it kind of grew a little bit more when you saw the product that they were putting out on the field. Last year was kind of a rough year for Raider Nation, but I think it has really turned around when you see what kind of product the Silver and Black are putting out there on the field, and it makes it an enjoyable experience. This team is fun to watch, and I think a lot of fans in Oakland have come to the realization like, hey, you know what? They're going to Vegas regardless. There's no stopping this. It couldn't work with the city. They couldn't get a new stadium. Let's just enjoy these final moments here. Let's try to hopefully get some playoff football back at the Coliseum before this team leaves and really soak up the memories. And there's even some Oakland fans thinking like, hey, you know what? Maybe you can go and enjoy this team in Vegas and not be completely opposed to the idea. So there was some resentment at the beginning, but as we've seen this team grow over time, you're seeing how the culture really is developing. Oakland fans are coming in and just really appreciating and soaking up the final moments that they have with this team in the Bay Area.
For the Kansas City perspective, we bring back Rob Cullen, sports director at Fox 4 in Kansas City. Rob, the Chiefs return home after a bye week. They haven't played all that well at Arrowhead this year. The Raiders have been, well, below good on the road and just got embarrassed by the Jets. Advantage who?
Advantage Chiefs, most certainly the Chiefs. Coach Andy Reid is more popular than pumpkin pie coming off a bye week. He's 4-2 after a bye week with the Chiefs, 17-3 in his career. Coach Reid has owned this division ever since he got here. The Chiefs have been in first, get this, for 47 football weeks. That's almost 3 straight years. They just went through the Raiders. We thought the Raiders would be relevant at this time, but then they get railed by the Jets. Amazing how those West Coast teams struggle in those early East Coast game kickoffs. Now the Jets are playing better of late, but 34-3, that is certainly embarrassing. So 100% advantage Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, Chiefs are 5-1 on the road, 2-3 at home. Why have they struggled at Arrowhead?
Yeah, that is surprising, but if we take a closer look and look at those 3 losses to the Colts, Texans, and Packers, those teams are a combined 21-12, and they all have very good quarterbacks, athletic quarterbacks. They also have good running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and that's certainly been a mismatch the Chiefs have struggled with so far this season. The Chiefs are 30th in the league against the run. They're giving up over $140 a game. That's a concern with Josh Jacobs coming to town. You may remember in that first game, he had 99 yards when they played in Oakland, so that's one of the concerns the Chiefs have to deal with this upcoming Sunday.
Rob, you've had a front row seat for Raiders Chiefs during your career in Kansas City. What makes this rivalry so great?
Yeah, the history of it, man, is definitely a difference in the air this week. Everybody here knows it's Raiders week, man. These two franchises, they just don't like each other. There are generations of fans who don't like each other. They have vehemence for each other on the other side. You know, this is one of the great rivalries in the NFL. Just driving around town, you see someone with a Raiders sticker. Sometimes you might wave if it's not Raiders week. No, not this week. You're cutting them off and going on your way. I was even at the game earlier this year, and just walking into the stadium, I had a red tie on as part of the Kansas City media contingent, and we got booed by Raider fans, so they certainly don't like us. We don't like them. Certainly a different feel, kind of like a college football rivalry, you know, a Michigan-Ohio State thing. This is generations, and this is in the blood. Just don't like each other.
Yeah, I want to see some GoPros on cars and see some of those cutoffs of people with the bumper stickers. All right, so the stakes are really high now. The Chiefs put the rest of the West in their rearview mirror with a win. Does the outcome of this game ride on the shoulders of Patrick Mahomes or the Chiefs defense? And Rob, is it my imagination, or was the Chiefs defense better when Mahomes was sidelined?
It's not your imagination. You're not on turkey tryptophan yet. That did happen. But if the Chiefs win this game, they'll basically wrap up their 4th straight division title. And remember, all 3 of the AFC West games are at Arrowhead in the month of December. And we saw what Mahomes did that second quarter earlier this season in Oakland. He was straight fire. He burned the Raiders' defense like Clark Griswold's wife burned that turkey in the movie Vacation. It'll be tough to repeat, though, 443 yards and 4 touchdowns if he doesn't have Tyreek Hill. You may recall Tyreek left the Chargers game with a hamstring injury. He's been working with trainers over the bye week. Coach Reed says he's optimistic that he'll play. The defense is optimistic it can duplicate the Mexico City game. They did play much better, led by the Honey Badger and Frank Clark. Those 4 picks were huge, and the defense stopped them when it mattered most. But, yes, it was against Rivers, who has a tendency to throw games away. And, yes, the O-line for L.A. wasn't great, but the defense showed up in prime time, and the Chiefs are looking for complete games from both sides of the ball. And special teams. Special teams have not been good. They need them to be good in December. They did play better. You are correct, sir. But they had to because Mahomes was out. Kind of like Michael Jordan. You remember when he had the flu and he went out there and played games of his life? Straight focus without Mahomes.
All right. Well, I know, Rob, I'll be having some turkey tryptophan on Thursday, and if that doesn't put me to sleep, Lions-Bears probably will. Enjoy the big rivalry game.
Yeah, I think I'm going to nap during that game and then pick up the late games. We'll be good to go there.
Good move. Good move. Our guest this week on Big Game Bound is Mike Smith. He led the Atlanta Falcons to the playoffs 4 times in a 5-year span, was named Coach of the Year in 2012, and he'll be coaching in the Hula Bowl game in January. Mike joins us now from Tennessee. And Mike, you worked steadily in the NFL since 1999. Are you enjoying a year off from the stresses and the grind of the NFL?
I really am enjoying retirement. It's a very different pace and a different atmosphere. Enjoying the golf, enjoying the fishing, and looking forward to watching the end of the NFL season. You know, it really doesn't get started until you get into the end of November and December and watching these NFL races.
Mike, there are some coaches on the hot seat right now, and I'm guessing that seat in Dallas is scorching. I know you went through it in your last year in Atlanta. How difficult is it to block out the noise?
Well, it's something that you've got to do, and really, no matter whether you're 10-1 or 1-10, in an NFL season, you need to block out the noise because every week you're going to have noise. There's a lot of teams that are on that hot seat right now, coaches that are rumored to be doing this and rumored to be doing that, and really you can't worry about those things because you have no control over it. And in this league right now, through the decade of the teens, there have been a bunch of guys 1 and done and 2 and outs, and it's just part of the business now. And you've got to just focus on what you can control. And the only thing that you control as a coach is preparing your team for the next game. And that's what everybody's trying to do right now. And this is the time that you make hay. There's a lot of teams that are still in contention for the playoff spots, and that's what you've got to be focused on. You got to be focused on having your team prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, Dallas is in first place in the NFC East, but 6-5 with a roster isn't exactly what they expected with the roster they have. Why has that team underachieved?
Well, I think it's a very competitive division that they're in. Even though they're 6-5, and I know that there's a lot of noise being bannered around about the team, and they're not happy with where they are at, but they got to realize right now that they are number one in the NFC East at this point in time. With 5 weeks to go in the season, you couldn't ask to be in a better situation. You've got to try to sell that to your players, tell them to get ready to go play the next game, and do the best that they can. It'll all take care of itself. You get into that tournament at the end of the year, all you got to do is get on a hot streak, and then you can end up hoisting that Super Bowl trophy. And when that happens, that'll quiet everybody.
On the other end of the spectrum, you had a team rolling in 2012, 13-3. What's it like in meetings and at practices when things are all going your way?
Oh gosh, there's no better feeling. You know, everything's great. Hey, 4 hours of sleep is great. You know, it doesn't matter that the coffee's cold. It doesn't matter that the lunch isn't good. When you're rolling and you're winning ball games, everything is fantastic. And you just got to keep, you got to keep that mindset, and you got to realize all the hard work that you've put into it. But when you get to that second season, and that's what everybody's trying to do, you only got one opportunity, because if you don't win, then you're going to be out. So you enjoy it, but you've got to make sure that you understand that you got to keep doing what you've been doing.
Patriots are 10-1. They're not happy about the cold coffee right now. I saw the question posed, is their offense good enough to win a Super Bowl? Is it? Or is the question, is their defense too good not to?
Well, when Tom Brady's the quarterback, your offense is good enough to win a Super Bowl. How many rings does he have? A lot. So I really believe that they are good enough. He doesn't necessarily have the wide receivers. They're starting to get healthy. I think that you're going to see it. They played in a downpour last week. It was a hard-fought battle, but that's a very good football team. You can't ever count them out. Defensively, they are really playing good. They're keeping people out of the end zone. They're on pace to could possibly break the 2000 Ravens record for 165 points. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes down the stretch. But they're playing outstanding football on defense, and it's probably the best defense statistically that Bill Belichick has had in the last 7 or 8 years.
All right, this is a wild race in the AFC wild card right now. The Bills are in solid position. The second spot, though, the Raiders, Titans, Colts, and Steelers are all 6-5. Browns are surging at 5-6, and they've got an easy schedule. The Jets might still be in play. Who do you like?
Well, it's going to be an interesting finish to the season, especially on the AFC side. As you mentioned, you got to like Pittsburgh. They're playing really good defense this year. You know, they have situations at the quarterback that is kind of a little bit unsettled, but you can never count out Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers with what they're doing on defense. And at the end of the season, you're going to have to play good defense, because there's going to be some outdoor games in that AFC North. And I don't know that they can overtake the Baltimore Ravens, but I really like them. And I would not sleep on the Tennessee Titans. Mike Vrabel's done an outstanding job there with that football team, and they're getting confidence in their quarterback. It's going to be a fun time for all the NFL fans to watch what's going to happen in these last 5 weeks of the season, especially on the AFC side.
All right, Mike, thank you very much for your time. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. Great to spend time with the family and just enjoy some Thanksgiving football and all that goes with it. Time to help you out with your fantasy football teams. Bob Harris from Football Diehards joins us, as he does every week. And Bob, it's the final week of the regular season in most leagues. Best advice for owners who need a win this weekend to get into the playoffs. How can you squeeze a few extra points out for your team?
Don't outsmart yourself. Look, that's part of our nature as fantasy football players, right? We're always trying to get cute, and don't think this is the week Lamar Jackson suddenly has a big drop off and you need to move Sam Darnold in because he has a great lineup, a great matchup. Play it straight. Go with the guys that got you there. Pay closer attention to the injury reports, etc. This is kind of a tricky week with the three, early games, 3 Thursday games. So make sure you don't get caught short. If one of your guys in those games are kind of nicked up, make sure you have fallback plans at all the positions for your injured guys. But mostly don't get too cute and don't outsmart yourself.
Do you tend to try to avoid these Thursday games if you can?
I think it's a psychological thing, but yeah, you kind of do because. Well, I think for the most part, it's like if your guys, lay an egg in those games, you have to sit there and stew over it until Sunday. Generally speaking, I try and ignore all these things. I try to ignore a lot of things, Jack, and I think that's like a big key for people. Weather is something that people often worry about, maybe over worry. I mean, football's been played for 100 years, I'm told, pretty much every hour on the television, and it's been played in winter. Inclement weather is part of the deal. Points get scored. So, don't panic about some of the smaller things, and that kind of falls into our tendency to overthink. But this Thursday game thing is a thing like that. Like, man, I just kind of want to avoid it. Don't avoid good matchups on Thursday. They're still good matchups.
All right. So, Bob, for owners who've already clinched, best advice for setting your team up for a playoff run?
Right, go ahead and cut back on the onesie positions, kicker and defense for sure, to the degree possible. Quarterbacks, depending on the size of the league, you should be able to stream quarterbacks if you run into a bind, get an injury to your main quarterback. So cut back and then go out and check your waiver wire and have a focus on handcuffs for key players. Maybe someone has not held on to Alex Madison for the Vikings and you have Dalvin Cook, or Tony Pollard is available. Go out and check your waiver wire for players like that. And also just go out and check and see if anyone through the bye weeks dropped anyone that's pretty significant, right? It happens every year. And many of the leagues I'm in, someone just finds themselves in a bind during the bye weeks and they have to drop a kind of a productive player. So go out and check for that. And then go take a quick look at all the opposing rosters. Look for positions of weakness for some of your opponents, and see if that dovetails with your areas of strength or weakness, and see if you can pull off trades before any deadlines expire for you.
All right, great advice. Is there anybody left on the waiver wire that might provide a spark that you've seen on a lot of waiver wires?
Possibly. I mean, Bo Scarborough's a guy that could still be available, although I imagine people will be snatching him up. Goes against the Bears in the Thursday game. Another case where the matchup's pretty good, right? The quarterback is an issue in Detroit. Jeff Driscoll's a little beat up, so go out and grab him. The Bears have given up over 100 yards on the ground without Hakeem Nixon, I think 6 of their 8 games without him. And Scarborough's been getting the workload. Benny Snell as well. I don't think we're going to see James Conner soon based on his comments, and Snell got the bulk of the workload. Looks like the every down between tackles guy, and Jalen Samuels will keep his receiving role. Rashad Penny's coming on, worth a speculative play there. With Chris Carson unable to hold on to the football, that seems like a reasonable play. Jack Doyle, Eric Ebron is out for the Colts, done for the year. They tend to throw to the tight end an awful lot. Haven't been throwing deep much with T.Y. Hilton beat up. So Jack Doyle, if someone has left him go. Sam Darnold's a great streaming quarterback the next 2 weeks. Got Cincinnati, then Miami, and Robbie Anderson if he's available for the same reasons.
All right, you brought up Bo Scarborough, so I'm asking for a friend here who doesn't want to outsmart himself. Joe Scarborough, or Bo Scarborough, or Joe Mixon?
I don't think you're outsmarting yourself here. Look, I mean, Joe Mixon's playing the Jets. Josh Jacobs says that's a pretty tough matchup. And it has been before that, right? It's not just a new thing for the Jets. Their run defense has been pretty ferocious. I mean, Mixon is still viable, just given, based on the volume he's getting, and the move back to Andy Dalton this week maybe helps him out because he has fared reasonably well as a receiver. But I think this could be a Scarborough game for me.
All right. Thank you, Bob. You can catch Bob on Sirius XM Radio, Fantasy Radio, from 6 to 8. And you can follow him on footballdiehards.com and on Twitter. Bob, thanks for your help. We'll see you again next week. That's all the time we have for this week. A big thanks to our correspondents, Mark Carpenter, Matt Roberts, and Rob Collins, our analyst, Ty Halleck, and fantasy football expert, Bob Harris, and our guest, Mike Smith. From our producer, Spencer Wheelock, and our crew in Grand Rapids, I'm Jack Doles. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week with a new show streaming at 1 o'clock on Thursday.